Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us today from so many places around the world. It's the second live episode of the Ashoka Changemaker Summit 2021, and we're dedicating it to a topic that affects each and every one of us: land, food, and the economy surrounding these two topics. Remember, there are 6 more online sessions of the Ashoka Changemaker Summit coming up in the next weeks. Register for them at acms.ashoka.org. My name is Corina Murafa, and I co-lead Ashoka's work on planet and climate. With our work on planet and climate, we aim to shift mindsets from the old paradigm of humans being separate from nature to a new one, in which humans are nature and treat nature with respect, empathy, and mutualism. We are also showing that planet and climate action does not mean trade-offs and sacrifices, but instead makes our lives better in many other ways beyond emissions reductions. However, we cannot talk about rebalancing the relationship between humanity and the planet without talking about reforming our economic architecture, particularly the way we produce, sell, and use food and land. Allow me to give you a couple of facts about how we engage with our food and soil. The world's increasingly rapid population growth requires an agriculture system that can feed 8 billion people. We demand fast and inexpensive food. This encourages a model of agriculture based on maximizing productivity. We overuse fertilizers, pesticides, water, and soil. Our soils are basically dead because we industrialize them. Close to 70% of the world's farm workers are in the informal sector and without access to basic labor rights. In Brazil, forests are being chopped down to make room for timber, soy, and livestock production. Out of the millions of cubic meters of lumber removed from the Amazon, only a quarter comes from forests which are under management, and 3/4 comes from the destruction of native forests to make room for soy, livestock, and other agriculture products. We buy identically looking, washed, pre-packaged, and even pre-cut food, which is of course wrapped in plastic and which is available all year round from supermarkets. And still, even with that food that we buy, we waste over 30% of it worldwide. Having said all of this, at Ashoka, we really believe that a better future is already here. And it's here because hundreds of Ashoka fellows all over the world are showing, as we speak, how this future looks like. We have with us today Luis Fernando Guedes and Gert van der Veer, today's guests, which are doing exactly this. Luis Fernando is joining us from Brazil. He's the founder of SOS Mata Atlântica and has previously championed at Imaflora, the first unified agriculture certification system in Brazil and the world's first certification standard for sugarcane to promote responsible agricultural practice when it comes to sugarcane. Hi, Luis.
Hi, Corina. Hello, everyone. It's an honor to be part of this summit. Ashoka is fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Luis Fernando, for being with us, and good morning for you. Gert is joining us from the Netherlands. He is the founder of Herenburen, which obviously I'm mispronouncing, but still. Herenburen is a network of collaborative farms in the Netherlands, which are changing farming, nature conservation, and food consumption by really empowering local communities and re-involving them in the production of food in their own direct surroundings. Hi, Gert, and welcome to Ashoka Changemaker Summit 2021.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. It's very, very nice to be here and to be able to speak to you this afternoon. Very honored. Thank you.
I'll kick us off with Luis Fernando, inviting you, Luis Fernando, to talk, in a nutshell, what is the future of land and food that you are envisioning through SOS Mata Atlântica?
Well, Corina, food systems are in a crossroad globally. So, as you said, from one side, we have had great increases in production of food. So hunger today is a political problem, is a question of poverty, of wars, of other things, but not the lack of food supply. So Brazil and many other countries produce a lot of food. It has resulted as a consequence of the Green Revolution. And this Green Revolution that produced very, very high yields of crops and food over the world has resulted in many environmental and social consequences. So we have had loss of biodiversity, we have had pollution of soils and water, we have had emissions of greenhouse gases, we have had deforestation, a lot of social inequalities, concentration of land, of labor, etc. And this is a very big problem. And we have also lost the crops we eat. We eat a very few crops in the world, mostly potato, grains, etc. And we have lost a lot of our biodiversity. All these commodities are now ingredients of a food industry, which is very concentrated as well. And the result of this present paradigm we have is that we have unsustainable production with social and environmental problems and diseases because of this unhealthy food, processed, industrialized food. And for land use, we have had dramatic changes where crops and pastures have replaced native ecosystems. And then we have three things going on for the future that I'd like to start. First, we have in one direction, maintaining the system through technology would be what would be improving the green revolution with algorithms, robots, and maintaining the same paradigm that would result in a more controlled agriculture system and more control of pesticides, fertilizers, and lower environmental impact, less impact. This is what they promise with technology. The second path is really making food production again a biological process. And instead of food production resulting in environmental impact in destroying nature, it would regenerate nature. So we would produce food together with nature, with biodiversity, including biodiversity, restoring soils, restoring ecosystems. This is what SOS Mata Atlântica is aiming to do in Brazil. We need to restore the Atlantic forest, which is the most threatened and devastated biome in Brazil. And agriculture can deliver that. Agriculture can deliver provision of environmental systems together with food production. So this is a second trend. The third trend is totally disruptive, that is artificial food. So in the second trend, in the first trend, that is this industrialized technological food production, we remain with the food industry and we still have the problem of this unhealthy food. And people far, the field and the land is far from the people. This second choice of making a biological, diverse, regenerative agriculture would offer fresh food and would make people closer to food production and to nature. And then artificial food is totally disruptive, whereas there is no connection between food production and nature. Food would be produced in factories without land. And this is a big question. What's the consequence, right? If we break the connection of nature and food produced, someone say, well, we'll have land to be restored. We have a chance, there will be no pressure of food production over nature. We don't know yet what it really means. What are the consequences for health? What are the consequences of concentrating even more food production and the food industry? So in a very few words, we are in this crossroad where in Brazil and our activity here, we are striving to have policies to support an agriculture that contributes to restoration of ecosystems, to regeneration of nature and inclusiveness and decrease in concentration of land, of the industries, etc. I'll stop here and we can talk more later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Luis Fernando. I loved the way you put it in your three pathways because it kind of really clarifies for everybody in a way what future options we have. And I was wondering, Gert, I have questions around particularly the last pathway with artificial food, and I hope we're going to get to that. But I want to move to Gert. I think you, Gert, are also sort of going towards the second pathway. But you're coming there from the perspective of food production in the Netherlands and reconnecting consumers to the food. And I was just wondering, how are you doing that? What impact are you seeing?
Yeah, thank you. Well, let me first introduce the Netherlands for those who are not aware of that. But we have a very, very small country. I think that's what we're known about. But we are also the second exporter of agricultural food. So the small country we are a country producing a lot of products in the agricultural sector. And that means that we are really abusing, actually, I would say at this moment, the soil and all the other values I've already heard, like water, biodiversity, environment, etc. To feed all our livestock, we also need the soy and other stuff from abroad to make sure that our cattle can have enough fodder. So that's the country. And in our country, at this moment, there are 45,000 farmers farming for food worldwide. But like already has been said, it's not for the places where hunger is, but for the place where economic values can be created, and that's what we started. We started to see all these mismatches between values and added values like biodiversity, water, soil, quality, etc. And I've been working on the theme of added values with farmers for I think a decade, and there was a moment I jumped to the conclusion, wait a minute, in the Netherlands we have 17 million people and we only have 54,000 farmers. So what can I do best? Create a movement of 70 million people or create a movement of 54,000 farmers? And because the farmers um, uh, are actually um, uh, stuck into the system, they do not have the direct choice to step out of it. I thought maybe consumers can help them. But what we did, we designed the farm. We designed the farm called Herenboeren. When I should put it in English, I would say it's this kind of gentleman's farm or family farm, so to say. And this family farm is owned by 200 households. And 200 households are together representing 500 people eating from one farm. And the farm is producing directly to the needs of these people. So that results in a very diverse farm, which is producing fruits, vegetables, meat like pigs and cows and chickens, but also eggs, etc. So in the end, we had designed this farm that could bring up 60% of the needs of these families. And the food is produced by a farmer who is hired by the cooperative of this collective household. So in the end, the households are the owners of the farm, and the farmer is working on their wishes, on that what they need. And we did that. We are doing this now in the Netherlands on 10 operational farms, but we are opening every year 4 to 6 new farms, having at this moment 10,000 households connected to their food production. And let me conclude to say that what we see at this moment, because that was also your question, what impact do we see? We see that people that not let me put it like this. I think connection with your food production is like a Trojan horse, because when you are working with your own food production, you have to think about biodiversity and themes like environment and soil quality, etc. So what we see is that people are really getting aware of all the worldwide problems we have at this moment by being connected and being busy with their own food production. And what I think is also very important, that the social part of our food production is also more stressed, underlined, so to speak. So, and what we see is that people are really starting to think, what am I doing? How do I live? What about packaging? What about, oh, and what job do I have? Am I doing the right thing? So after 10 years we've been working on this concept now, people are coming towards me and say they have changed jobs because they were reconnected with their food production. So it's very, yes, maybe I think it's more society broad that we are seeing impact, and not only on the soil quality, which is also improving, of course. So I think that is what we do. We try to make impact in the total society with our concept.
But why do you think it's important to make this connection between consumers and the food? And I'm thinking here of what Luis Fernando was saying earlier. You know, there's this promise of artificial food, of meat, which is not really meat, and it's guilt-free because no animal is suffering, and it's not producing by devastating the Amazon. So, you know, maybe consumers, what they want to have is comfort, but a guilt-free comfort, and the comfort which, with the help of technology, stops damaging the environment. And being the devil's advocate here, isn't that a pathway that people that's rather preferable for them?
Well, I think I've never been someone who is telling the right pathway. I think for future food, I think there are a lot of ways to to design our path. And the one we'd like to explore is, what if you are, as a consumer, are really directly connected to your food, because we see a lot of benefits more than just obtaining healthy food. Like I was already saying, people are really becoming aware of their position in the ecosystem, and so they are not only thinking about food vitality, what and how nutritious is it? Is it a difference between feeding and filling up? There's my body. That's also something people are tend to discuss right now. But what we strongly believe is that there is only one source of energy in this world, and that's the sun. And what we really believe is, how can we put the energy of the sun in the most corrective way into our bodies? Because we believe that that's the system that was original designed. I don't know by whom, but that's what we really want to stick to. Because connecting with nature and feeling the power of nature makes you really aware of your own position in the ecosystem. And I think when you are eating artificial food, you can fill up your body, and maybe it might be healthy as well. But are you really experiencing your role here on this little globe, and your impact, and your your footprint? And I think that's very important. Independent whether you are busy with whatever job you have, I think being aware of what your role is, that you are part of nature instead of using and abusing it. I think so. For us, that's the very important to make sure everyone is connected to his food production.
It's such a beautiful connection between spirit and body, and the way the system works, and indeed showing how holistic everything is. I want to take us back a little bit to Brazil, Luis Fernando. No matter where we are based, like I'm based in Bucharest, Hert is in the Netherlands, but we all think of Brazil and of what's going on in there, and it's on everybody's minds. It obviously looks, at least to me, that there's a collusion between the powerful politicians, powerful business interests, and there are many powerless being left behind. So I'm just wondering, how do you empower the powerless? How do you bring them back into the game?
Well, we are in a very particular moment of the Brazilian history, right? So terrible. And we are looking forward to change. So we expect that in 2023, we're going to have a new president, and we'll get back to our normal problems that are not small, but currently they are huge, because we are dealing with attacks to democracy, not only the environment and poverty. Hunger is coming back, poverty is increasing, the environment, deforestation are increasing. So we are in a very particular moment. However, inequality is a very strong mark of Brazilian society, right? And it has a lot to do with what we are talking about here, because the roots of inequality is land, because historically land is very concentrated among the rich people in Brazil, and the poor doesn't have access to land. So if you want to break this relation of power, this inequality of power, food systems make a huge difference if we bring experiences like the Netherlands, that we really empower smallholders, the indigenous people, traditional communities to participate of food production, and to be part of food chains, etc. They will have more power, but it requires policies for that, and we need not only companies' policies, private policies, but public policies, as we have had in the past. So we have great experiences in Brazil. For instance, there is one policy that is a national policy that children in public schools receive food that comes from organic food cropped by smallholders. So it connects a healthy food for children and youth with food production that decreases inequality and is environmentally regenerative, friendly, whatever we call. So we can change that. But then we also need to change our parliament. We need to have new elections, and it's a long-term process, Corinne. I think this is what we need to have in mind. We need, for a country like Brazil that have 500 years of inequalities, and who owns the land, owns the power, and this is exactly what's going on now. What we call the bancada ruralista, or the union of the farmers in the Congress, they can approve any law they put to be voted. It doesn't matter what society wants. So to change this, we need to raise awareness, we need education, we need to break paradigms, as Ashoka is saying. But I would like to emphasize again that the food system may have a central role in this regard, because Brazil is a country with a very small industry, and our economy is driven by agriculture mainly. And this is very concentrated, the land, the income, who produces, and we have, how can I say, thousands, millions of farmers, small farmers who have land but doesn't have access to technology, to research, to education, to seeds, to production systems, who are disconnected to the food system. So we need solutions, and there are many Ashoka fellows working in this regard in Brazil, in the Northeast, and North here where we are, trying to empower farmers and smallholders, women, traditional communities, to be connected to food systems. But will require many efforts, and the public policies have a central role. Of course, as entrepreneurs, we want companies to be engaged, to make differences, and they are fundamental, but we need governments. But the good thing is that we have governments in 3 levels, right? The federal, the state, and the municipalities. And now we have a lot of hope that subnational leaders will lead us towards these changes. So this is my approach about that it's very difficult to break, but we need transparency, we need participation, and we need to change our government as soon as possible to breathe and have a chance to think about the future. Today, we are just reacting to avoid the worst. We are really fighting against a negative agenda, and we don't have energy to fight for a positive agenda, what will be possible only in 2 years, unfortunately.
Yeah, not a lot of optimism, but at the same time, there's a break in everything, because that's how the light gets in. So I think that what you've pointed out with this idea of social entrepreneurs working with small farmers and empowering them, social entrepreneurs working with subnational governments that may be more connected to the citizens as a lever for change. I personally take this as small rays of hope. Going back to the Netherlands and to the system that Gert was proposing, this cooperatives owned by the people, driven by the people, and so on. How I read your model, Gert, it's really that you're destroying global capitalism. It's a completely different and alternative model. And I'm just wondering, is that what you're doing? And if so, what role does profit maximization, classical economic growth argument play in your model?
I don't know whether it's my goal to destroy capitalism, but it might be a spin-off of it. I can agree on that. When we're starting to design our system, because we are a system in a system at this moment, but our own system, there was one thing very important, and that was let's try to design a system without exits, like shareholders who can sell their share and be getting money for their value, for their efforts in a company, for example. Because money is going to be the main goal for these people. And as long as money and money making is the main goal, there is little or less concern for other values like biodiversity, environmental, well-being of people working for you. So What we wanted to design was a system without exits. You cannot sell. The only discussion we have in our companies and our farms and our cooperatives are about what added value can we deliver. What we do, we share the costs on an annual base. So the farm needs about 250,000 euros each year to produce the food for these families. And what we do is we split it up over the amount of people who are the member of the cooperative. So that means 250,000 euros split over 500 people each year. That means 10 euros, 11 euros per week, and you have the best food for that in return. It's or beyond the quality of organic. We try to work with nature instead of against it, and quality is better than what you get in the supermarket. And by doing that, by sharing costs, already at the 1st of January what your cost will be for your food until the end of the year. So the only issue that needs to be discussed is what is about quality. How nutritious is my food? How good are we for environment? Can we increase biodiversity? Can we deliver more landscape quality, etc.? So the only discussion we have is about added values. And what we strongly believe in is that looking at nature, looking at an ecosystem, look at a tree. There is no tree growing for eternity. When the tree is ready and is a mature tree, the way he wants to grow is by spreading itself and replicating itself. And I think that's a really good thing to look at when we are designing economic systems, because when growth for eternity means that you are taking over small businesses as a bigger business, there will be less diversity in business. There will be less differences, more, and there will be less family concerns involved in the business. You are becoming a number as an employee instead of a human being. And what we are really trying to tell everybody is, do not talk about growth for your own organization, but talk about replication, because that is that you can be big by being small.
Interesting point. Thank you for sharing that, Harriet. We have a bunch of questions that have come up into Swapcard. I'll take them, obviously, or at least some of them. But before I go to the questions, I really want to ask you guys to share the work that you're doing, the connections that you're having with other Ashoka fellows, and how more and more as social entrepreneurs, you're working collectively with your peers. I know that there's a conversation going on in Brazil. I know that you're involved in it, Luis Fernando, and I know that Harriet, you are co-leading together with Ashoka staff our Weaving for a Thriving Planet initiative here in Europe. So please, really in a nutshell, that we can also pick some questions, share a little bit what's this collective approach that you are sparing some time for. Whoever wants to go first, please.
Yes, I can start. I think there is a great number of Ashoka fellows in Brazil working in this deforestation agenda and restoration agenda. So now we have even Carlos Nobre, Tasso Azevedo, Beto Verissimo, many other fellows that we are working to find solutions. So SOS Mata Atlântica is part of MAP Biomas, for instance. There is a collaborative initiative or NGOs, researchers, and even startups of technology to map land use in Brazil. And it has become a very powerful tool for advocacy for solutions for land use, because now we can see each piece of Brazil, what have changed from 1985 to the last year in a very small detail of 30 to 30 meters. So the use of technology by these very innovative Ashoka fellows has had very, very impact to control value chains, to make advocacy for public policy, etc. And there are many fellows also working in this initiative in the ground to support family agriculture, agroecology, organic food, and but now we are all trying to resist. So almost all of us are trying to, because the policies we helped to build, they are being destroyed. the networks we build are very weak. So again, we are in a very particular moment in Brazilian society. It's gonna change. But most of us are now really trying to maintain what we have done for the last 10, 20, 30 years and rebuild what has been built from us. So this collaborative work also to go to the streets and there is a great effort for communication inside Brazil and outside Brazil. Some of us were going to be in Glasgow in the climate summit now also to advocate and try to influence international negotiations that can also help our solutions to be more powerful and scalable.
Thanks for sharing. And I'm happy to know that across the Atlantic, we have this network of solidarity that you guys are building together. And we can only, be grateful that you're doing that and try to support you as much as we can. How about the European part, Gert? What are you trying to achieve here with your Ashoka peers?
Yeah, exactly. What we've been designing was this project called Weaving for a Thriving Planet, and it enhances that. We were convinced that when we are going to work together, that we can reach out for more impact. We are all individual Ashoka fellows, and we're working on our own concepts. But what if we could work together? What if we could really make impact? And what if we could get the best concepts out of other countries to our own countries? Yeah? So what we started to do, we selected from the European list the fellows who are busy with biodiversity, food, and are based on a social community way of working. So it's the community, it's biodiversity, and it's food. And we have now out of 15 countries selected or elected or joined they're joining fellows from over Europe. And what we are doing is we have designed this concept of the bioregional, the bioregion, and the bioregion is about 100,000 hectares. And what we are going to do is to improve quality in these regions by bringing up all the concept of the fellows we have brought together. So there is a kind of a menu list of all the measures you could take to improve your bioregion. And actually every ingredient on this menu is a concept of a fellow. So what we're doing is inviting each other in our regions to bring up all the concepts, mix them and improving them and putting them into the context of the region. So that is a very nice process to have so many fellows together talking about their concept and sharing our knowledge and our experience. And at the same time, for the individual fellow, it means that he can scale up and replicate towards other countries. So there is a win-win. Win for the region, win for the fellow, win for the concept, win for the environment, etc., etc. So it's a very nice process.
And I know you guys are also sharing the same mindset around the connection between humans and the planet and this idea of being nature, of humans being nature. So I hope that you're also going to be able to break through, to regular citizens and affect the mindsets.
We're trying to reach a lot of communities. So one of the of our KPIs is, of course, the amount of soil improvement, etc., but also the amount of people involved, because we really believe that is very necessary to do, because it's the quantity that counts as well. We have to when enough people are singing the same song, I think the song can be sung by everybody.
Beautiful. I'm going to go to the questions, and in the meantime, if there's more coming up, please, guys, type them in. I'm going to try to take them. There's a question from Susie Augustin, and I like it because it's challenging. The argument of many big food companies and government agri-ministries is that people can be fed only if agriculture is done large scale, and therefore industrial agriculture is the solution. Economies of scale, classical economics argument. How might we challenge more this argument? I don't know who wants to step into this question.
I think first we don't measure well the impacts of the system. So if we incorporate the environmental costs, if we incorporate the diseases that are the result of people eat and become ill because of the food, we realize that it's not so efficient as it looks like. So this is the first point, to understand that this efficiency that we reached resulted in very, very strong impacts that now threat our planet. Climate change is an example, right? And COVID is a result, is a consequence of losing biodiversity and food and crop going towards nature, this imbalance. And so we need to have a wide perspective to see that this efficiency is now a threat to our life. First point. Then we have many cases and solutions like the Dutch, the Netherlands solutions that says it's totally possible to have profit, health, healthy food, sustainable production, and it works. We don't need to rely on this centralization and concentration because the externalities, the social consequences, the environmental consequences became a problem that are bigger than the solution they are offering.
Yeah, maybe I can add something to that because I fully agree what you're saying, and I think it also has to do with the way we consume and what we consume. You know, a lot of calculations on what we need is based on what we want instead of what we need. So, for example, there is calculated with the amount of meat consumption from rich Western world, like when everybody is when food when world community is growing bigger, they want automatically eat more meat, but that's not truth. You know, we have to see what we need to eat, and like Pablo Titonel is someone who is really calculating on what we need to eat. Then we need to eat more plant protein, for example, like nuts and etc. And what we eat is meat. And I think when we change food consumption, and it's also healthier for ourselves because people being obese because they are eating so much meat, yeah, then your footprint is on the one hand is enlarging, on the other hand is your own health and your own well-being is going backwards. So let's take it from the right point of view, and let's start with what do we need instead of what do we want to eat.
I have another tough question around consumption for you guys. Stefan, who's living in Maryland, and he says that he loves eating bananas, which he finds in his supermarket. But he would be willing to give up on the bananas if indeed he'd be contributing to better health, social, environmental outcomes. But he wonders at the same time whether this is the choice that we have to be making and asking people to make between diversity, so more options, not necessarily better ones, but more options. And on the other hand, health, social, equity issues, environmental issues. How do you see this? Do you see these trade-offs? Maybe Gert, that's a question for you.
Yeah, I can see that, but I don't know whether it's a trade-off. You know, I think I'd like to consume bananas as well. But what we need to think of is what we can two things. One is what can we produce locally? Let's eat that locally. Yeah? So that's the first one. But I cannot eat. We in the Netherlands, we cannot produce bananas locally. So, but does that mean that I don't want to eat bananas and that I should stop eating bananas? I don't think so. But what we need to be aware of is which banana do we buy? Is it the banana out of the real big system with pesticides and use of chemicals, etc., or is it a sustainable produced banana? And how is the banana I eat affecting the local people? That's also one thing. And so I still think we can be able to share, exchange products we produce in different regions. But the second thing I'd like to put forward is that it has everything to do with circularity. And let me take another example. Instead of the banana, let me take our own country, and let me tell you that we are exporting a lot of pigs and other meat, yeah? And therefore we are using soy from Brazil. So what we and what we do is, because we do not eat it for ourselves, because we are exporting it, the only thing we are left with are the nutrients. Actually, literally, it's the shit. The nutrients from Brazil coming to our country by being fodder for our pigs, but the pigs are going to be exported. The only thing left is that we are having a huge pile of shit, literally. And I think what we need to think of is, how can we bring these nutrients back to Brazil? Because that's where we took them. That's where we stole them. So I think we have to, on the global level, keep on thinking in circularity of what we're doing. And then I think exchange of products is perfectly possible.
I want to take us to one of the points that you've mentioned earlier, actually at the beginning of your speech, Luis Fernando, about this third pathway with artificial food, lots of technology, and because I didn't get your perspective on that, and there was a question actually around this in the chat. If artificial food production can be a solution which is good for us?
Well, it's a very dangerous solution. And it's totally, I guess Gerd said very well, it breaks this paradigm that Ashoka is striving to, that is to connect people to be nature, right? And food is a very powerful way to try to make this connection. I think that from the environment perspective, there are many uncertainties on the trade-offs. But from the economic side, there are major risks. So who is going to decide what we are going to eat? 3, 4, 5, 10 companies of the world. And so there is a huge, what's going to be done with smallholders, with farmers? They are going to be what in humankind? Where are they going to? What are they going to do? So this is a choice with huge consequences for society, not only the environment. It impacts the major part of our population who is in the field, is farmers, small farmers, is a lot of people, not the major part. And everyone who is eating is going to be on the hands of a few people. So we need a lot of time to talk about that. So I can argue, well, environmentally it can be fine. Maybe, perhaps, I'm not sure. But the social and economic consequences are huge, and we need to discuss. We cannot leave this decision in the hands of a few investors and funds and companies that may decide the future of the planet. It's a dramatic change in our history, in our planet. We cannot take this as a simple solution that, well, it has no impact, it's just better, easier. No, it changes the world, it breaks our relation with the planet. We put apart a big part of our population, of course, the marginalized people as well. And we are not going to be able to decide even what we eat. So let's be careful. It can work eventually with many controls, balances, transparencies, etc., to be a solution for part of the problem. We are not going to have one single solution, right? So we need one summit only for this topic.
Thank you for that, Luis Fernando. I actually have in mind a couple of Ashoka fellows that we should be bringing in together to debate this fascinating topic. We're at time, so I really want to thank you all for joining and for attending. Let me end by saying that, without any doubt, when it comes to planet and climate, the challenge in front of us is enormous, and it's really not a moment to give up. It's a call to action. We're really looking for people who understand that if we are to win this fight, we're going to need everyone. We're looking for people who see nature as a collaboration partner and not as a resource to be optimized. We're looking for people who see that climate change isn't just an environmental issue. It's a whole systems issue. It's about justice. It's about agency, decision-making, freedom, social norms, identity. And having said that, we are inviting you to attend a facilitated conversation right after we wrap up this panel debate and discuss more on how each and every one of us can contribute towards this movement. Thank you so much, Luis Fernando. Thank you, Gert, and thank you everybody for joining.